Have you ever wondered what exactly shifts inside a basketball player's body when they, step back from an easy, close-range layup to sink a deep, high-pressure three-pointer?
Oh, it's a great question. Because it does look different.
Right. I mean, we know it visually looks different. You can see it on the court. The stance changes. The jump might be higher. Maybe the player looks a bit more strained.
Yeah.
But what is the central nervous system actually doing behind the scenes?
Exactly. What is the actual internal mechanism?
Yeah, what is that invisible internal script that makes that ball go exactly where it needs to go, regardless of where you're standing on the floor?
It's a phenomenal question because what we are observing on the surface, the arc of the jump, the flick of the
Oh,
wrist,
flashy stuff.
right, the flashy stuff, it's really just the final outward manifestation of an incredibly complex, lightning-fast, biological computer program running in the background. And that program is adapting in literal milliseconds.
And that hidden biological program is exactly what we're getting into today. So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission is to explore the hidden, invisible neuromuscular choreography of a basketball shot. We are going to look past the visible movement, past the jersey and the sneakers, and dig right into the electrical signals firing inside the muscles themselves.
And to do this, we are drawing on a really rigorous piece of research that provides a remarkable window into this process. We'll be analyzing a 2024 study titled Neuromuscular Control Strategies in Basketball Shooting: Distance-Dependent Analysis of Muscle Synergies.
Quite the title.
It is a mouthful, but it's published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine, authored by a team of researchers, Penglei Fan, Zhitao Yang, Ting Wang, Jiaying, Youngsuk Kim, and Sukwon Kim. And the methodology here is highly detailed. It combines kinematic motion capture with electromyography to bring a high level of scientific clarity to an action we usually just view as, a casual sport.
I love when we get to bridge the gap between sports and neuroscience. We're taking something you can just watch on a Sunday afternoon and breaking it down into raw data.
Absolutely.
But, before we can really understand how distance changes a basketball shot, we have to understand how the brain controls complex physical movements in the first place. Because I imagine it's not as simple as the brain just sending a single text message to a single muscle saying, hey, contract now.
Not at all. Think about the sheer volume of data your brain would have to process for that. If your central nervous system had to consciously dictate the contraction, relaxation, and force output of every single muscle fiber required to shoot a basketball,
It would just be too much.
the computational load would be overwhelming, the delay would be massive, you'd honestly never get the shot off before the defender blocked it. So the brain uses a highly efficient evolutionary strategy called muscle synergies.
Muscle synergies.
Right. Instead of activating muscles one by one, the central nervous system groups them into distinct pre-packaged modules.
Okay, let's unpack this. So it's a bit like a conductor leading an orchestra.
That's a good way to look at it.
Right, like if the conductor had to walk up to every single violinist, cellist, or trumpet player and tell them exactly how hard to press their bow or exactly how much air to blow through their mouthpiece at every given millisecond, the symphony would completely crash.
Exactly. It's just too much micromanagement.
Right. Instead, the conductor is signaling entire sections, the strings, the brass, the percussion, telling them to come in at specific times and at specific volumes to create a cohesive piece of music. It's basically a brain shortcut.
That is honestly a brilliant way to visualize the computational savings. In biomechanical terms, these sections of the orchestra are defined by two key components. First, you have what we call motor modules.
Okay.
These are the specific groups of muscles that are weighted together, just like grouping all the strings together in your analogy.
Got it. And the second component?
Second, you have the motor primitives. This is the temporal aspect, like the timeline of activation. It is essentially the sheet music that tells the conductor when to cue that specific section and how loudly they should play.
Okay, so a muscle synergy is the combination of which muscles are physically grouped together and the precise timing of when they fire during a movement.
Precisely.
Which brings us to how these researchers actually measured this. Because figuring out those invisible groupings and timelines requires some serious technology, right? You can't just ask a player what their muscles are doing.
No, the players have no conscious idea.
Yeah, so the study brought in 10 skilled right-handed youth basketball players. And these weren't just random kids shooting hoops in a driveway. They were high-level players with proven consistent shooting percentages.
Which is important for the data consistency.
Exactly. And to capture their external movements, the team used a highly advanced motion capture system featuring 13 infrared cameras and 45 reflective skin markers placed all over the player's joints and limbs.
But, the motion capture only gives us the geometry of the shot. To capture the internal neuromuscular data, the actual commands from the brain, they used wireless surface electromyography, or EMG, sensors.
So they're physically attaching these to the players.
Yes, directly to the skin, over 9 specific muscles across the upper body, core, and lower body to measure the electrical activity. And then the athletes were asked to take shots from 3 specific distances.
Right, a short distance of 3.2 meters, a middle distance of 5.0 meters, and a long distance of 6.8 meters.
And to make sense of all that movement, the researchers broke the entire physical action of a jump shot down into 4 distinct trackable stages.
Which makes tracking it much easier. So first, there's the sinking stage, which is that initial dip or bend in the knees as the player gathers themselves.
Right.
Then the lifting ball stage, where the player brings the ball up to their shooting pocket. Third is the takeoff stage, the literal moment they leave the ground. And finally, the release stage, where the ball leaves the fingertips.
And this is where the data analysis becomes incredibly sophisticated. Because by combining the motion capture data with the raw electrical signals from the EMG sensors across those 4 stages, the researchers could effectively reverse engineer the central nervous system's code.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They ran all of this data through an algorithm called non-negative matrix factorization to extract the exact muscle synergies.
Whoa, time out. Stop right there. Non-negative matrix factorization. You just completely lost me. Explain that to me like I'm 5, because that sounds like something out of a theoretical physics textbook. What does that algorithm actually do?
It is a mouthful, I admit. Simply put, it is a mathematical filter used to unjumble a massive mess of overlapping signals.
Okay.
Imagine you're in a crowded room with 9 different conversations happening at once, and it just sounds like pure noise. This algorithm listens to the noise and isolates the distinct underlying patterns.
Ah, I see.
It separates the raw, chaotic electrical activity recorded by the EMG sensors and identifies the actual underlying sections of the orchestra, to use your analogy again. It mathematically proves which muscles are firing together as a single unit.
Got it. It's a pattern finder for biological noise. Okay, so we have the algorithm identifying the patterns, and we have players shooting from 3 vastly different distances.
Right.
My initial logic says that if I am stepping back from a 3.2-meter layup to a 6.8-meter three-pointer, I have to throw the ball significantly harder. I would assume my brain needs to download and run a completely different internal software program for that deeper shot.
Yeah.
Do players use totally different sets of muscle synergies when the distance changes that drastically?
That was the foundational question driving this entire experiment. And the revelation here fundamentally shifts how we view motor control. The researchers discovered that the shooting distance does not affect the number of muscle synergies at all.
Wait, really?
Really. Across all 3 distances, short, middle, and long, the central nervous system breaks the entire incredibly complex movement of a basketball shot down into exactly 3 synergies or modules, always 3.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if the number of synergies doesn't change, it means your brain is using the exact same 3 ingredients to bake completely different types of cakes.
That's a great way to put it.
Like you have flour, sugar, and eggs. But depending on how you mix them, in what order, and how long you bake them, you either get a dense, heavy pound cake for a close shot in traffic or a light, airy sponge cake for a deep three-pointer. You aren't going to the store to buy new ingredients. You're just dynamically altering the recipe on the fly.
The underlying structure of the modules remains remarkably consistent. What alters significantly is the pattern, a specific weighting of the muscles within those 3 modules, and the precise timing of their activation.
So the brain doesn't reinvent the wheel.
No, it just changes how hard and when it pushes it. Chronologically, these 3 modules fire in a very rigid, structured sequence to execute the shot.
So what is the chronological order? Give us the baseline recipe before we start tweaking it for different distances.
Well, it follows the logical progression of the body's movement. Module 1 is the first peak, and its peak activation occurs during the lifting ball stage as the player brings the ball up.
Okay, makes sense.
Module 2 follows right behind it, peaking during the takeoff stage as the player explodes off the floor. And finally, Module 3 peaks at the very end during the release stage.
So that 3-step chronological sequence, lift, takeoff, release, is the fundamental neuromuscular blueprint of every single jump shot.
Yes!
Okay, so if the ingredients, these three modules, are exactly the same every time, let's look at how the mixing process changes when our player steps back from the short 3.2-meter line to the long 6.8-meter line.
Let's do it.
Let's start with Module 1, the lifting ball stage. I imagine we are talking mostly about the arms and back here.
Yes, the data shows Module 1 is heavily dominated by the upper limb muscles. We are primarily looking at the biceps brachii in the arm and the latissimus dorsi, the large muscle in the back.
Right.
And the findings regarding this first module are highly counterintuitive. You might logically assume that a longer shot requires a stronger initial lift of the ball, more arm strength from the get-go.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
However, the study found that Module 1 is actually activated to a significantly greater extent during short-distance shooting.
Wait, short shots. The upper body muscles used to lift the ball work harder when you were right next to the hoop.
Yes.
That feels totally backwards. If I'm closer, I need less power, so why are my arms working harder?
It comes down to the spatial and biomechanical environment of a real basketball game. When a player is 3.2 meters from the basket, they are in the paint. They are facing intense defensive pressure, traffic, and reaching arms.
Oh, right.
To avoid getting the ball stripped or blocked, they must lift the ball incredibly fast to a high, secure, stabilizing position. The short shot requires a rapid, high-intensity activation of the arms and shoulders just to secure the ball's position under duress before the release even happens.
Ah. Okay, that makes perfect sense when you actually visualize a game. Down low in the paint, it's all elbows and speed. You're snapping the ball up high just to survive the defense.
Exactly.
Okay, so the arms are dominating the initial lift up close. But as we step back, what happens to that second stage, the takeoff? Because if my arms aren't doing the extra heavy lifting to heave the ball from deep, where on earth is the power coming from?
Well, that brings us directly into Module 2, the takeoff stage. This module relies heavily on the core and the lower body. The EMG sensors picked up massive activity in muscles like the erector spinae, which runs vertically up the back to stabilize the core, and the rectus femoris, which is one of the major power-generating quadriceps muscles in the thigh.
And what does the algorithm show happening to these core and leg muscles when we move to the long-distance shot?
For long-distance shots, the data shows a massive shift. The peak intensity of the second module increases significantly. But more importantly, the timing of that peak shifts backward.
What does that mean exactly?
Yeah. It means it activates later in the sequence and with much more explosive strength during the takeoff phase compared to a short shot.
Wait, so when I'm further away, I don't use my arms more to push the ball?
Okay.
I actually have to rely more on the timing of my core and legs. Because I think anyone who has ever airballed a three-pointer has felt that desperate instinct to just, heave the ball forward with their shoulders and triceps.
Oh, so definitely.
But you're saying the science points to the lower body engaging later and much harder.
This raises an important question regarding force generation and energy transfer. A 6.8-meter shot requires significantly more energy to reach the basket than a layup.
Sure.
If your central nervous system attempts to generate that extra energy solely with your upper extremities, your shoulders and arms, you lose all accuracy and mechanical stability. The brain intuitively knows that the arms are for aiming, not for generating massive force.
Okay, that is fascinating.
Therefore, it shifts the neuromuscular reliance heavily into the lower extremity muscles. A delayed, highly intense activation of the hip and knees generates a massive upward force that travels up through the body.
It's the kinetic chain. It's literally a wave of energy starting from the floorboards.
Yes.
You can almost picture it like cracking a whip, right? The energy starts at the handle, the feet pushing against the floor, and the legs fire a fraction of a second later with immense power.
That's a perfect analogy.
And that energy wave travels up through a tightly stabilized core, amplifying as it goes, until it reaches the tip of the whip, which is the hand.
That is exactly the mechanism, which brings us to the critical climax of the entire movement, Module 3, the release stage. The ball has been lifted, the player is suspended in the air, the kinetic chain has brought all this energy up from the floor, and now that energy must be transferred directly into the basketball.
This is where the game is literally won or lost. How does Module 3, this final stage, adapt to the distance?
This is perhaps the most striking difference uncovered in the entire study. In a short-distance shot, the release module is heavily dominated by those upper limb muscles. It's all about wrist flexion and elbow extension.
Okay.
The overall energy requirement to get the ball to the hoop is low, so the smaller distal joints, the elbows, wrists, and fingers, can easily handle the demand and gently guide the ball in.
Right, it's just a delicate little flick of the wrist.
But in a long-distance shot, the mathematical weights within Module 3 completely transform. The algorithm showed that lower limb muscles, specifically the gastrocnemius lateral, which is the outer calf muscle, and the rectus femoris in the thigh.
The thigh muscle.
Yes, along with core muscles like the external oblique, remain highly activated throughout the entire release stage.
So what does this all mean? Let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. My calf muscle and my thigh muscle are still actively firing at the exact millisecond the ball is rolling off my fingertips.
They absolutely have to be. The distal joints alone, the wrists and fingers, cannot possibly manage or compensate for the immense energy demand of a 6.8-meter shot.
Because they're just too small.
Exactly. If those small joints tried to handle that force alone, the shooting mechanics would break down entirely. The body must efficiently utilize the kinetic energy generated from the jump and the twisting forces of the core all the way through the final fraction of a second of the release.
Wow.
The lower body and core don't just launch the player into the air and then shut off. They stay aggressively engaged to stabilize the body in midair and drive power completely through the shot until the ball is gone.
That is honestly mind-blowing. It completely validates that old coach's adage to shoot with your legs. Everyone who has ever played basketball has heard a coach yell that.
Oh, absolutely.
But this study physically maps it out and proves that shooting with your legs isn't just about jumping high. It's about the precise, sustained, millisecond by millisecond electrical activation of your lower body and core right up to the very moment of release. If your legs turn off while you are in the air, your shot falls short.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the practical applications for athletic training and rehabilitation are immense. Think about novice players or younger athletes.
Yeah.
They often struggle from the three-point line because they try to consciously muscle the ball from deep range. They rely entirely on upper body strength, heaving it from the chest. This data suggests that coaches shouldn't focus on telling players to push the ball harder.
Right.
Instead, they need to focus on helping them mimic the synergistic timing of elite players.
So if someone is consistently leaving their three-pointers short, the fix isn't doing more bicep curls or shoulder presses in the gym. The fix is adjusting the timing of their lower body kinetic chain.
The fix is neuromuscular. They need to train the timing and intensity of their lower limb activation. They need to learn how to leverage the energy from their jump and the rotational twists of their core during the actual release phase.
That's incredible.
It becomes a conversation about core stability and mastering the synergistic coordination of the legs, core, and arms, acting as one fluid system, rather than trying to isolate upper body power.
That completely reframes how we should look at practicing any sport. It's not just mindlessly repeating a physical motion. It's literally training a very specific, highly coordinated neural pathway. You're writing biological code every time you take a practice shot.
You really are.
So just to recap our journey today, we started by learning that the brain doesn't micromanage individual muscle fibers. To save computational power, it groups them into elegant muscle synergies, like a conductor cueing sections of an orchestra. We discovered that stepping back for a deep shot doesn't change the number of those synergies. It's always a three-step recipe. But it radically alters their pattern and timing. And finally, we saw the hard electromyographical data proving that deep shooting success is dictated by a late, powerful surge from the lower body and a core that stays fully electrically engaged through the very final millisecond of the release.
It truly highlights the unbelievable efficiency and adaptability of human biomechanics. And, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to consider as we wrap up.
Please do.
If our central nervous system has the capability to simplify an incredibly demanding, highly variable task, like shooting a basketball from different distances, into just a three-step modular script, what other incredibly complex physical skills in your daily life are secretly running on simple, prepackaged neuromuscular autopilot without you even realizing it?
That is a great question.
When you are typing on a keyboard, when you are parallel parking a car, or chopping vegetables in the kitchen, how many invisible symphonies is your brain conducting right now just to get you through the day?
That is a wild thought to walk away with. There is a whole invisible conductor in your nervous system running the show behind every movement you make. For anyone who found this as fascinating as we did, we highly encourage you to go read the full article in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine.
It's definitely worth a read.
Yeah, seeing the exact motion capture data and looking at the actual EMG graphs for yourself really brings the numbers to life in a way that just hearing about it can't match. And please remember to follow the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming deep dives. The next time you shoot hoops in the driveway or just watch a professional game on TV, Look closely at the player's legs while they are in the air.
You will see the game differently.
You really will. You'll never see just a jump shot again. You'll be visualizing that invisible wave of neuromuscular timing. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.